They showed up with the
It's not a
rules.
question of legality either. We can make any rules we want. It's more of a,
Thank you.
more of just why. It's logic, you know, common sense. We got the house in today.
Hello, Mr. Griffin.
That's all right.
How's the weekend? Good?
Yeah.
That's good.
No problem. Yours?
Good, good.
Hi, ladies. I didn't even say hi.
Nice, it was nice time to paint.
You drive by, see this one sidewalk stuff. I'm nice and done. Sidewalk done. Remember last night? Coming in here.
Okay, we're going to get started here in about a minute. So it's time to check your cell phones to make sure they're off or in silent mode.
Art. Should know it by now. And then it's supposed to be on the amended paper anyway.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Okay, today is November 8th, 2021. This is Barberton City Council. Tonight is a regular legislative meeting night, but before we go into that meeting, we will go into our committee meetings. We have 5 committee meetings tonight, and we will start off with City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation. It is Monday, November 8th, 2021, 6 p.m. in council chambers. All members are present, plus those noted. Topics of discussion, request for legislation, a letter from Councilman Heidick requesting legislation to create a grant request, skate park grant request. I believe everybody should have a copy of it there. Are there any questions?
I have none.
Councilor Jaber?
Yes, sir.
Any from the body?
No.
From the gallery? Mayor?
I was not copied on the letter. Who's the grant request to?
Oh, I'm sorry, it is to the Barberton Community Foundation. I can get you a copy here.
Okay, how much is the grant for?
It is up to 75,000 match or 50% of the construction cost, whichever is lower. And in this request, it also specifies that if the community foundation were to somehow find grants on their own that would cover skate parks, that would count against their money. So if they were to find, let's say it was 75,000, if they were to find a grant themselves worth 50,000, that would go towards their portion. Thank you. Anything else? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, last minute.
Councilor Greer?
Thanks, Chair. Where are we at with like testing and all of that other stuff that, because I noticed that there was a deadline that could be used, was it December 2022?
The deadline I put in there as expiring, the grant to expire December 31st of next year if it's not completed. That gives us a timeline to privately raise the other half or whatever funds are necessary. I thought it was important to have a deadline on it to get the ball rolling. Mayor, do you have,
Yeah, the Barberton Community Foundation has a standard policy that a grant can only last for 1 year, with updates, I believe, every 6 months. So the money has to be used, that time can be used.
thank you. Director Tracy, Director Hunt, do you have anything to add for the question of where we stand with the ground testing?
I did call T&M and Associates last week. They have not issued a formal report, but they gave me assurances over the phone that we should be good. Phase 2 is complete, and we should be good to Decker Park as a site. But I'm awaiting that final report, which that should be coming any day. I have not received that this evening. So.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I will second that, sir.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. The second, we have board appointment. Mayor requesting Mrs. Stacy Dooley to the Parks and Recreation Commission to fill an unexpired term beginning immediately and ending December 31st of this year, and also the 5-year term commencing the beginning of 2022 and ending December 31st of 2026. Before I go any further, everybody got the application? Okay. And before I go any further, I spoke with President Medges and our clerk here. Mayor, we are going to have 2 separate votes. We can't do it as one for the unexpired and then the new term. So it may sound a little goofy, but we just can't do it as one vote.
Yeah, it's just timing, yeah. Do you want a separate request for the, to start January 1st, or?
No, we just have to, because we're going to suspend it, to vote on filling the vacancy and then the new term, because the letter of request did come in October. It's just the timing of Parks meetings.
No, I anticipate 2 separate votes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this appointment? From the body? And from the gallery? All right, well, first I have to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 304 not on the agenda, and Council Rule 401 not called for at the Committee of the Whole. And this vote would be to suspend that we could appoint the vacancy immediately. So do I have a motion to invoke 702?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I will second that, sir.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And once again, I'm going to ask to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend.
Wait. Don't you have to call for the vote on the appointment now?
Oh, I was going to suspend both and then call for the vote, but can we do it in that order?
Do it how she said.
Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this appointment?
I'll make that motion that we call for the appointment of Stacy Dooley to the Parks and Rec Commission to fill an unexpired term beginning immediately and ending 12/31/2021.
Thank you, and do I have a second?
I will second that, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that one will go to the agenda tonight. And then on a separate vote, I will entertain to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 304, not on the agenda, Council Rule 401, not called for at the Committee of the Whole, to appoint Ms. Stacy Dooley to the new term beginning January 1st of next year and ending December 31st of 2026. Do I have a motion to invoke 702?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then, do I have a motion to call for this appointment?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I will second that, sir.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. That is the end of any business we have. Open up for miscellaneous discussion from the committee. Councilor Jaber?
I want to say thank you for following up on the skate park. Like I said, they started the conversation, and I want to say thank you for your hard work. and Mr. Trevor Hunt for following up with the phase 1 and phase 2. Hopefully we can move forward with this. There's a lot of people in the city. I think it would bring a lot of people into the city also with this skate park. I appreciate all your hard work you do with this.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous discussion from the gallery? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I will second that, sir.
And we are adjourned at 6:08.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Public Welfare and Safety. It's Monday, November 8th at 6:11 PM here in council chambers. All members of City Council are present, as well as all members of the committee and all others noted. We have a request for legislation from Mayor Judge requesting a resolution supporting the state of Ohio's House Bill 408, addressing the theft and sale of catalytic converters. Emergency wording and one reading requested so that if passed, our support can be sent to the state legislature. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, do you know any of the specifics of that? I apologize, I haven't read up on 408. Is it increasing penalties and?
I don't recall, I don't have the information in front of me right now, but I can get that for you.
Thank you.
I may have that, I just don't know where, so I will check Mr. Heidick and let you know, because I did write down some of that information.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin,
And I'll second it.
second by Mr. Greer. All in favor?
Aye.
Before we move on to the next piece of legislation, I spoke with Director Miller regarding a piece of legislation that was brought forth with respect to catalytic converters a couple of weeks ago, and she gave me some legal jargon that I feel she's definitely better at explaining than I am. So this is with respect to the 6-month driver's license suspension and an increase in the fine to, yes. Thank you.
So we'll just take one thing at a time. So as it pertains to the driver's license suspension, in the state of Ohio, we are permitted as a home rule to enact certain laws. However, we cannot enact laws for things that we don't have authority over, for example. And one of those would be driver's licenses. The only way we could enact an ordinance would be if it parallels a state ordinance. So for example, in Ohio, there's Ohio Revised Code in Title 45 on OBI. And we can have a parallel ordinance in codified ordinances for OBI. So OBI in the state allows you to suspend people's driver's licenses, and in our codified ordinances, we have a similar OBI ordinance, and we can suspend people's driver's licenses. So the state law allows us to do that, but we cannot enact any other type of law to suspend a driver's license that doesn't mirror an existing Ohio Revised Code law to suspend driver's licenses. So we could not suspend a driver's license under a criminal statute for that reason. So we don't have any home rule authority to do that. The second issue was a fine. So for example, you look at the value of a catalytic converter. So a value of a catalytic converter new could be, and I did some slight research on this, of course I'm not super familiar with all the value of car parts. So the value of a new catalytic converter could be $1,000 to $3,500 brand new, but the value of a used catalytic converter could be much older, and theft of catalytic converter occurs on cars that are typically at home or in parking lots, so those are typically not brand new catalytic converters. If the value of the converter is $1,000 to $7,500, that would make it a felony of the 5th degree. If it's less than $1,000, that would make it a misdemeanor of the 1st degree. In Ohio, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree, the maximum fine is $1,000. So the jurisdiction of the Barberton Municipal Court, the maximum fine that occur in Barberton Municipal Court is $1,000. So the only fine that could occur here is $1,000. If they did steal a catalytic converter that was between $1,000 and $7,500, that would be a felony of the 5th degree, and the maximum fine for that, which would be, of course, in common police court, that would be $2,500 if somehow that value of the catalytic converter was over $7,500 and it potentially went up to a felony for 4th degree. That is when the fine could go up to $5,000. So those are the issues on the catalytic converter request as it pertains to driver's license suspensions and fines.
Thank you. So I'm guessing that's what prompted this request for legislation for the resolution, because this is a way that we can support Ohio's House Bill 408 and get the fine stiffened so does that answer, do you have any additional questions?
So what's the, thank you, Ms. Miller, for your time, by the way. What's the maximum fine we can do now? Just $2,500 and $1,000, correct?
Well, it really is dependent. If you're talking about the theft of the catalytic converter, it's always dependent on the value of the item being stolen. So if we would charge them with the theft, and we would have to determine the value of the catalytic converter being stolen. So if it's a catalytic converter on an older car, I honestly don't know that. I would just assume it would be if my Google, and I'm telling you it's Google research because I didn't know how to really determine the value of a new catalytic converter. Other than that, it seems that the value of a new catalytic converter can be $1,000 to $3,500. So that's a brand new one. So if it was a new car, it might be that. So that means the value of a used catalytic converter would be less than that. So a misdemeanor is the value of $1,000 or less. So if we charge them with a 1st degree misdemeanor of theft and the catalytic converter was less than $1,000 value, the maximum fine would be $1,000. A 1st degree misdemeanor.
I appreciate it, thank you. Just still a big crime going on in the city. We had a business in Barberton over the weekend, had another one stolen off their vehicles. Josh Power Wash Windows, if you guys know their local business. And just, we gotta figure something out, hopefully just.
Right, so for example, if we were able to find the person who stole, let's say, 5 catalytic converters, and they were off of 5 new vehicles, then the value multiplies, and then therefore the value is multiplied and it increases the degree of the crime. So that does not help the victim, but does help law enforcement.
So essentially, the more that the criminal steals, the higher the felony.
The higher the degree of offense. Does not help the victim.
Right.
Because typically defendants in criminal cases can't
Right.
compensate the victim for the
Correct.
the crime.
Does anyone else have any questions?
And that, I am not being critical of the fine. I'm not being critical of it, but the issue with criminal defendants is they can't pay the fine. And so you could make the fine anything, and they're just not gonna pay it. And so that's kind of I'm not critical of wanting to fine someone. I value that, we do that every day. It's just that the defendants typically don't pay the fine. We have more success in fines on speeding and OVIs because typically those folks have jobs and are able to pay fines. Criminal defendants in theft cases typically don't have employment, which is typically why they're stealing.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next request for legislation is a request from Councilperson Carol Fry, requesting an amendment to Barberton Codified Ordinance number 35.5,
351.
or, I'm sorry, yeah, 351.5, night parking of commercial vehicles in residential districts. Emergency wording requested. So did everyone get did all council members get the suggested changes? Or did just the committee? Everybody did. Thank you, Lord.
Thanks, Lori.
Okay, do you want to
Yes.
explain?
There's really not many changes to this. It is just for clarification, and this came up because of an officer wanting to issue a ticket to somebody that had an RV that was parked in the street. And the person that was given the citation was someone who researches whatever happens to them or everything in their lifetime or whatever. Mrs. Knoll?
He was not given a citation.
Oh, he was pulled over for the
He
citation.
was not pulled over.
Well, not pulled over, but he was, what do I want to say? The officer spoke to him about his RV being in the street, correct?
He was asked to move his vehicle. He was
I beg your
asked to
pardon?
move it.
He was asked to move his vehicle, she said.
Okay. All right, so therefore he researched it, and he couldn't find anywhere where it specifically said a recreational vehicle. So I was contacted by Chris White also, and we were talking about it, and he said that he thought that we should make this particular ordinance give it more clarity by pointing out the things that you cannot park in the street, your driveway, whatever. And that is why we are making this change.
I just have one comment. There's only one thing in here that I'm not really a proponent of, and it's the moving van. Only because if you live downtown and you rent a U-Haul and you're moving first thing in the morning, you know, there's nowhere to park. So, I mean, I know that it would be a singular instance, but moving
Right.
van is something that I'm not certain should fall under, you know, if you've rented a U-Haul to move and you don't have a driveway, where are you supposed to park it?
Well, I mean, that would even be on any residential street. If you had a moving van, it might be parked out in front of
Well, right,
your residence.
right.
So,
No, I know.
I don't know. I was just, Lieutenant White is who suggested what
No,
we should put into it.
I'm perfectly fine with all of it. The only thing that's jumped out at me was moving van, because chances are it's only there a day or two,
Right,
so I don't
right.
see that as a problem, but,
As long as it doesn't have the address that you
well,
live
right.
on the side.
But nobody's paying, you know,
Right,
to keep a U-Haul for days and days if they don't need it, trust me.
right.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes,
could I ask a question?
yes.
I don't have the language here. Is recreational vehicle Is it defined in the wording?
I did not see it defined.
Let me see. I did print something about motor vehicles, what defines
Right.
that.
It's just motor vehicle that I have here that's defined.
Okay. Thank you. So what, can you read the amendment? I just don't know what the amendment is. I'm just gonna share.
Mr. Bennett? You can give her your copies, I have an extra set.
I wrote on mine.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
So does anyone have any input or questions regarding this piece of legislation? Yes.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted, moving van seems to be more of a descriptive, like what the van is being used for. Would box truck make more sense? I would believe that would be more of a, in my opinion, that's more of a vehicle description rather than what the truck's being used for.
That would
Good
be
point.
fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah,
We can just put,
we can just strike moving van and.
yeah, put box truck. Yes, it started out just about recreational vehicles, and then it kind of expanded. He said, well, you probably should put in travel trailer or camper,
Yeah, work truck.
boats, what have you. So I'm fine with that. Because that covers a moving van as well.
So,
Do we have to amend it on the floor when we vote for it?
right, but I was just gonna, you just said that a box truck covers a moving van. Well, my
No,
whole
no.
point is that I don't want it to say, I personally don't want it to say moving van, but it's not my decision, so that's just, so if box truck is intended to mean moving van, then, you know,
My suggestion was simply just removing the action that the vehicle is being used for and just labeling it a box truck. I mean, box trucks could be used for anything from commercial work vehicle to moving van, to anything.
yes. Mrs.
So
Stewart.
we're removing the word commercial vehicles, so we're going to be allowing commercial vehicles
No,
on the street?
But Lieutenant White said that when people see the word commercial vehicles, they don't continue to read it, and they think it's only for commercial vehicles.
Mrs. Miller, have you looked at this piece of legislation?
I think it's pretty clear cut.
Because we have the complaint of the commercial vehicles on the street in my ward that are constantly blocking the being able to turn and blocking driveway access. So,
And so you're concerned about having the word commercial actually
Right.
removed?
Well, I would not remove the word commercial.
yeah. Because that, then they would say, well, it's not a recreational vehicle, it's a commercial vehicle.
Yeah, so the situation that came up, no one was saying that this person could not park a recreational vehicle. The reason he was asked to move it was because he was blocking the sight line. He kept referring back to this ordinance, did not say recreational vehicle. It didn't matter what this said. He was blocking the sight line. This is the argument I had for over 25 minutes with this person on the phone. It doesn't matter what this ordinance said. You can't park anything by someone's driveway if the other person can't see around it, right?
Right.
Or boat, not a vehicle. Right.
Maybe we need to do some more research.
Moving van was already in there, it looks like. Is red,
Yeah, the red was the
addition?
changes. Yeah, moving van was already in there. It was, what
Right.
was added was travel trailer, camper, boat, or recreational vehicle.
Sure.
Yes.
What,
Just one moment. Yes.
what's the consequences, I mean, if they do park the commercial, I mean, they can park it and get a ticket, and then 2 weeks later, park on the street and get a ticket? Is that all they're gonna get out of it and continue to keep doing that? I mean,
I-
it should be towed in a way, because if you park your vehicle on your property and get a citation, it can be towed. So why can't it be towed off of a public street? That's my concern and question.
So can it be towed if it's off of your private property? I thought if it was
Well,
plated.
that's a different department than on the street.
Yeah.
Yes, but on the street, they can park a commercial vehicle on the street, and they just keep getting a ticket and paying the ticket. I get that, but then they can just continue to park like that. There should be
There's no deterrent.
something that's after one ticket or 2 tickets, it gets towed.
So I'm gonna say what was submitted to us is literally just a snippet out of all of it. So unless
No, that's basically all of it is in that. But that's why I added, please refer to Chapter 1210 of the Barberton Development Code for all parking specifications, because it's a big section.
right.
And if you had a specific question, you could refer to the
Right.
development code to find out whether or not
Right.
you are complying.
I'm looking at it for the recreational, I understand the intent of this, and I'm looking at it here. The development code does outline saying that what a recreational vehicle is. Travel trailer, motorhome, truck camper, fifth wheel, park trailer, and it also goes into stipulations for something that probably ain't covered, but if it falls under the criteria. So I just wanted to point
Thank
that
you.
out, that there is a definition.
Yes.
Oh, he beat me to it. I was gonna say under 136002 definitions, 300 is what he said, and then 201A is even more defined on recreational vehicles, so he just beat me to it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this something that could possibly fall under if there's a situation like that where they're getting multiple tickets for parking on the street, say a camper? Is this something that can fall under the nuisance law?
The camper isn't the problem. It's the commercial vehicles that are the problem.
But this is addressing though, I feel like this is addressing the recreational vehicles more so than the
Right.
commercial vehicles.
And
This
as far
piece
as
of
commercial
legislation.
vehicles, I don't know what the situation is downtown, but I have had people in my ward park commercial vehicles at their home, and I have sent building, and then that is the end of it.
Building won't do it if they're on the street.
These are at homes.
This is.
That's what I'm saying.
In front of her home. Okay.
So,
But the whole thing goes back to Mrs. Miller said, this incident wasn't a ticket for any of the parking. He was blocking the ability to see around a corner or past the stop sign or to get out of the driveway. Correct?
Yes, and I think that Lieutenant White was just asking for the addition of the word recreational vehicle. Correct?
No. Initially, he
asked for
was,
boat.
I beg your pardon?
He asked for boat.
I have a letter from Lieutenant White.
I'm not sure why Lieutenant White wouldn't have sent me the letter since I'm chair of safety.
It says, first I would suggest that the word commercial be removed from the heading of this section, as it can certainly be misunderstood by our citizens who have no legal background. Second, I would suggest that travel trailers, campers, recreational vehicles, and boats be added to the current language. And that's a letter from Lieutenant White.
So did you reach out to him, or did he reach out first, or did he reach out to you first?
The problem was, this happened in my ward. So
Okay, I was just trying to get- I was just trying to get some background.
therefore, somehow I got some emails about it. And and Lieutenant White had gotten back to the person that had the vehicle parked in the sight line.
Okay.
And then I called Lieutenant White and we talked about it, and he said, I think that we could, remedy this if we change that particular part, that particular codified ordinance, and make those additions, and then it would be very clear. So that's how this came about.
So, Mrs. Coburn, you're against removing the word commercial?
Absolutely. I don't know where it belongs, but I don't want it to be eliminated.
Why can't we say commercial/recreational vehicles in residential districts?
That would work.
Because then you're covering both,
Mm-hmm.
and, and in the development code, it clarifies what those consist of, so.
Which is why I would like that cited, so
In the-
that you would have something to.
Right.
If you have somebody that's researching it, that they see that they have to refer to the
Right.
development code in order to get more clarification, if even more is needed.
And as far as, I just want to circle back to Taylor's question. I mean, I think that multiple calls would potentially be a nuisance, but I'm not for sure if we got an answer to that. Mrs. Doherty, did you have your hand up?
I just, you're going back to Mrs. Thompson's question about
It becoming a
ticketing and
nuisance.
stopping? Is that what we're-
Yeah, it would be considered a nuisance if there's multiple calls.
I don't know about that, but I don't think it's specifically listed in the nuisance ordinance about parking issues, but I'd have to look at, junk vehicles might, but I don't know about recreational, commercial, and like that. But I'd like to say that ticketing by police is largely just, not ticketing, but towing is largely discretionary. So typically what would happen is you've got a neighbor who's put up with it now for 6 weeks with this RV in front of their house. They don't call the police. Police have no idea what's going on. Let's just pretend. And then they finally call the police, and the police calls the guy out and advises him, get it off the street. It's hard for your neighbor to see around the RV. So that would be step one. That would be a logical and reasonable step one, is that you would advise the person, don't park there. So, and parking violations are also usually driven by complaints, not by officers driving around. So they get a second call, let's say 2 weeks later, then it would get a parking ticket, typically. Now, if there's a third time, they might tow it, because now this guy's not listening. He's still parking his RV where people can't see around it. That's the evolution from a complaint to a tow. 3 unpaid parking tickets. Now, I'm not positive of this one. I believe it's 3. I think Barberton has this ordinance. Unpaid is an automatic tow. That's how it works. So a lot of police work is discretionary. I would tell you that towing vehicles in most situations is discretionary unless it's a hazard. So, I don't know if that answers anyone's questions, but I wanted to explain how that works.
Yes.
Also, I wanted to point out that council does not get to say when or how much a towing or any of that. That's not what we get to do. So I'm not making light of it, but we don't get to say after 2 times they have to tow it. That's not something we have the ability to do. I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Okay, yes.
Thanks, Chair. May I make a suggestion that, I think there's something here. A police officer has identified an issue that he believes could be simplified. Maybe we just hold this and come back to it after further clarification on what the intent was.
So, I don't know how, Mr. Griffin, you haven't really weighed in, we feel about, I mean, I'm comfortable with pulling this at least out of committee, not necessarily one reading and emergency wording. I don't think it's imminent for that, which would allow for, additional conversation if need be. I think that remedying what Mrs. Coburn thinks and putting commercial / recreational, I think that alleviates one of the problems or one of the concerns. Mr. Griffin, how do you feel?
The problem was the line of sight, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That was the problem
Yes.
originally, was the line of sight. So if this vehicle was parked there and it wasn't parked in the line of sight, he wouldn't have been, no one would have said anything, am I correct?
I wasn't there.
No, I'm just saying, that's why we got it here, right?
Right.
I know
Right.
I know where the home is.
Right, yeah.
And it's not on a corner.
Not on the corner.
It's in the middle of the
Right,
block.
and they
The
were
middle
backing out and
of
they
the
couldn't
block.
see because of the vehicle.
So,
Being on the corner doesn't have anything to do with it.
Right.
You can still
No.
block someone's sight line and not be on.
yeah,
Right.
'cause, I mean, I know downtown, I have a
Yeah.
hard time oftentimes seeing
Right,
pulling out.
but I'm just saying that I wasn't there to see what was going on. I don't even know where the vehicle was parked, other than it was in front of the house.
Right. But I'm telling you what the facts were because I was speaking to the officer on the scene. So that's what the issue was. He was blocking the sight line from the neighbor.
Right.
So these changes wouldn't even affect what this particular problem was, correct?
I don't have a problem with you adding it. I'm just saying that the issue presented by the person in her ward who complained to Mrs. Fry, to me, and to Lieutenant White, the issue wasn't that it was a recreational vehicle. It was a thing that took up a lot of room and blocked the sight line. So if you want to add recreational vehicle, you can. But the issue was sightline. That was the issue that presented to the officer that day.
Yes. Just one moment, just because Mrs. Angelos had her hand up for,
Oh, I was just gonna point in case you didn't see her.
no, I did see her,
Okay.
yeah, I just didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
Anyway, it says codified ordinance 351.5, night parking. We don't want night parking, do we? I mean, do we want to take that out? Because it looks as though it's just at night. Am I reading this wrong? Or-
So I guess what I would
It's
say.
about 1 hour after
Yeah.
sunset and 1 hour before
So
sunrise.
what I'm gonna
and that
say
is when
is if you have
that
Linden
applies.
Sons at your house to repair your
Right, right.
furnace, or my husband to repair something, I mean, you can't restrict parking if they're not blocking the line of sight. You can't restrict someone from doing their job. So I think that's why it's falling under night. That would be my take on that. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that nobody called me. Somehow I just got in the email mix. And I
That's
knew
different.
that this person was in my ward, and maybe Lieutenant White reached out to me or something. But it was not, I did not get the initial complaint. I just got involved after the fact. And I talked to Lieutenant White, and that's how this all transpired.
Okay. Mr. Heidick, did you have your hand up?
No, I just didn't know
Oh,
if
you
you saw
just wanted me-
Counselor Angela
okay.
up there.
Okay, so, the Safety Committee, where are you at with this? Would you like to amend it to read night parking of commercial / recreational vehicles in residential districts?
I personally don't feel comfortable making any I don't fully understand the intent of,
Okay.
to make any recommendations. If it came from an officer, obviously know there's a problem that was identified. I just don't know. I'm
Okay.
hearing-
Even if
I'm
we
not familiar
go,
with the situation.
even if we go 3 readings?
Sure, we can,
Are you comfortable with 3 readings? That's
It
by
doesn't
the end of
matter
the,
to
I mean,
me.
it's before the end of the year, so, yes, Mr.
Mrs.
Griffin.
Vivek, the problem with the line of sight, right? Is there any way you can put language in there about the line
Well,
of sight?
I think it's the law.
Yeah, so many feet from whatever, you can't do
No.
that. From the driveway or something?
So there's a law about how many feet you have to be from someone's
Yeah.
driveway.
5 feet. Sorry, I'm sorry.
What is it?
5 feet.
5 feet? So, I mean, I don't think we need to legislate that.
No.
Which is why I said to
Right.
refer to the development code,
Right.
because it has the answers for all
Okay.
of the parking situations.
It just makes me think that why do we even need this ordinance?
that's what I'm
We have
saying.
the development code, yes.
Because the development code isn't the codified ordinances. They're
Okay.
two separate codes.
Right.
So
But-
you can't refer to the development code in the codified ordinances.
Okay, so the part where it says to please refer to chapter 1210 of the Barberton Development Code for all parking specifications, that can't be in,
That's not in the ordinance.
that's what she has,
That's what
that's
she's
what's proposed
requesting.
in the ordinance. It's in red.
There is no ordinance yet,
There
from
is
what I
no
know.
ordinance right now.
I beg your pardon?
In the ordinance right now.
In the current
No.
ordinance?
The red is what she's proposing to add.
At the present time, there is not. This has not been changed.
I understand now. I think I understand
I
what he's
think
talking
we
about.
need to
He
have-
couldn't legally
Yeah,
enforce
We
it.
I
need
think,
to have
I think
this-
we need to, before we pull this out of committee, I think we need to just,
Chill.
double check everything.
3505, 35105 is one sentence. Night parking of commercial vehicles in residential districts. It's one sentence.
In the ordinance?
There is,
In the codified ordinances.
and it doesn't say no person shall park a school bus, commercial tractor. Doesn't say that?
It does, and it ends with before sunrise, period.
Right.
Right.
That's the whole code.
I
That's
get what
the
you're saying.
whole
So-
section 35105.
Right.
So all she wants to add is travel trailer, camper, boat, recreational vehicle.
Well, I was under the assumption that she wanted to also add, please refer to chapter
Yeah.
1210.
I was, but Mrs. Miller says that that can't be done. But that clarifies it better.
So, I would like to wait till the next safety committee, and then we won't do three readings. We need it drafted how we want to
Right,
see it.
it's not even drafted
Right.
yet. So,
Right. Well, it's on the agenda to call out a committee with one reading and emergency wording, so we don't have a draft, which it doesn't get drafted, I understand, until after it comes out of committee, but I think that there are still some looming questions. So I think moving forward, next safety committee, we will get this firmed up, and then we will call for it. And then I'm comfortable calling for one reading. I just am not comfortable calling for one reading when we have this many questions. So how does the committee feel about that?
That's okay. I agree.
You agree? Okay. So we will, sorry, I'm just making a note.
you're just going to discuss this in the next safety meeting, correct? Is that what you're noting?
Well, I want to read this entire section here, and,
Well, it's not much.
right, but I do want to go to the development code also and look at it. And then if anybody has any additional questions, I urge you to reach out to Lieutenant White or Mrs. Miller or Mrs. Fry, so that next safety committee, I mean, we don't have to necessarily have a big discussion, we can just be prepared to call for it. Yes.
Sorry. this may be premature, I'm trying just to understand this in general. The request is basically to add recreational vehicle so that it can be enforced by the police. Although that's not how it came up, it was a line of sight thing. When looking into it, he couldn't find the ability to cite that person via the recreation in the law. It was only in the development code. So I think he was asking, and that's just, this may be premature, to give the police the ability to address a recreational vehicle on the road, or of sorts or something. But, yeah. Because like Mrs. Miller said, that the development code is not a codified ordinance, so they can't
Right.
act as a legally,
Right.
lawful.
Right. Okay. Okay, so everyone get your, yes, Mr. Griffin,
Can you add that to it and take it out of committee? Can you add recreational?
I was comfortable with adding it to night parking of commercial / recreational vehicles in residential districts. Yes.
I'm not a legal person, but we would have to add the definition of a recreational vehicle to the ordinance or to the law as well, correct?
It's already in there.
I see it under the development code, I don't see it under, oh, and you're saying in the actual codified ordinance?
In,
Find it here.
hey, if it isn't licensed, it's recreational.
Yeah, but most of those things require license.
I was just being
Right.
facetious.
So I think that when you're spelling out, when you're spelling out travel trailer, camper, boat, maybe we need to just get rid of the word recreational vehicle in there, in that part, because that's general, because I mean, I would say here it's listed recreational vehicles pretty well. What else would there be?
What are you saying now? You want to,
So he's saying if we don't have a definition for recreational vehicle, this would just be in the heading, night parking of commercial / recreational vehicles in residential districts. And then no person shall park a school bus, commercial tractor, agricultural tractor, truck, or more than a one-ton capacity bus, trailer, semi-trailer, pole trailer, moving van, travel trailer, camper, boat, or recreational vehicle. So do we have to say or recreational vehicle? What other, I guess we don't have RV in there, we have camper. What other recreational vehicles could you park there? So do we need it, do we need it to say or recreational vehicle? Because I feel like we've defined what a recreational vehicle is, just based on the list of things that we've
Right. Yeah, I understand.
the main reason he wanted it was he wanted it in
Right.
the name recreational vehicle.
But it would be in the heading. And recreational vehicle, in my opinion, is defined, even though it says this is it doesn't say this is a recreational vehicle. I mean, it's travel trailer, camper, boat, what else is there? Jet skis? That would fall under boat. I
Yeah,
can't think
so-
of a go-kart, I don't know.
If we're using the definition from the development code, there's a lot more, travel trailer, mobile home, truck camper, fifth wheel trailer, park trailer. I don't know how in-depth we would need to get with actual defining of a recreational vehicle.
Right. Mrs. Miller, how specific do we have to be in the codified ordinance as far as recreational vehicle if we add the word recreational?
So what I would do is, how about we get a draft
Right.
Okay,
and stop talking about this until we get a draft?
thank you. Okay. So for the next safety meeting, we are going to get a draft together, and then we will move it out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have pending legislation, ordinance number 115, 2021, titled amend ordinance number 84, 2006 nuisance law, and ordinance amending ordinance number 84, 2006, sections 674.02 notice and 674.04 cost of abatement of the Barberton codified ordinances by changing the wording to modify nuisance activities to be calculated using 365 days from the earliest nuisance activity. So we had lengthy conversation last safety meeting regarding this piece of legislation. Mr. Greer, did you happen to send the email that you sent me this afternoon to all of council or to just me?
I did not. I just sent it to the committee.
Okay. So, you want to go over some of the concerns quickly that were expressed last week and how you've proposed to potentially amend it to be worded?
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Chair. So in our discussions of this, it was pretty complicated. Some suggestions were made on changing the wording of how it was spelled out on how these were calculated. Currently, when it was proposed, it was using 365 days from the earliest nuisance activity. After consulting with Carla and Mrs. Miller on just a simplified version of what the actual intent was, and using the feedback from council at our last discussion, we would be making the change to use for it to say 365 days prior to the last nuisance activity. That would accomplish the intent of the original ordinance or proposal, and actually is the recommendation of a couple council members last time we talked. And Mrs. Miller said that was good too as well. So that was the proposed change that I was presented to committee via email today. This was just around lunchtime today when I got with Mrs. Miller about it. And if that was good with the committee and if council was good with it, then I could draft up that big ordinance proposal that I originally put together, and I can modify that to match this wording that was suggested.
I think that would be good, because this is the second reading
Yes.
tonight. So, yeah, that would be great. Anybody have any input?
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
I talked to a couple people today and last week. I have this on my list. You could change it to 365, or you could have it a calendar year. That's not the problem. The problem is enforcing it. I have houses that took years and years. Mr. Mayor, one house took 20 years to get torn down. And we have stuff now that's been on the that's been getting back and forth with citations and stuff, and nothing happens. The people go in there on a walker or cane or whatever. You could change it to whatever, and it's not going to do anything. You know, maybe it'll make you feel good because you've got it from 365 to the calendar year.
Right.
But as far as the problem is enforcing it and doing something about it. We have no teams.
I have to agree with you, Mr. Griffin. I think
Yes.
I think it's really important moving forward that we reinstill in our CDBG budget money allocation to tear down blighted homes, because we do have a problem, and I don't necessarily, I agree with you when you say that it doesn't, I don't think it matters either, whether it says 365 days prior to the earliest. I don't think it matters, because the fact of the matter is Lieutenant White gave me the statistics, and since 2012, he said there have been less than 100 letters sent, and that's not even citations. And then Mr. Flaker also confirmed that we really don't collect either. I mean, it gives you the tool, but if we can't enforce, then it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I can honestly say in the last 3 months, it has changed. We're getting more, the teeth are finally getting in there. Last week I had a business in Barberton on Worcester Road, had 4 or 5 cars towed off their property into business, and Kyle Brennan, he's doing an awesome job with that. Again, I brought it up last week, but I finally think that we are moving forward with that, and him and Roger are really on it, in my ward at least, and Ward 4, I mean, they're on it right now.
So I don't, I'm not saying anything bad about the building, like, the building department not doing their job. I'm just saying that, you know, we have a big problem, and it takes a big solution. Yes, Mayor?
Council is actually talking about two different issues here. So the nuisance law, the intent of the nuisance law was surrounded by criminal activity. There's certain criminal activity that happens, then they enforce that, separate from property maintenance. So I think it's blending together here tonight in this conversation. If you want to change the definition of nuisance to incorporate property maintenance, then that would solve some of the issues. Because if you're talking about nuisance law, you're talking about property maintenance, you're talking about abatement and demolition, so there's multiple kind of conversations that are blending together versus just one piece of it, which is nuisance law, which is in front of council now.
Yes, Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I just piggyback on what the mayor was saying, that we do have an issue, we don't have no teeth. Chief Morber did say that the letters that are sent out in the sense of the criminal nuisance are very effective.
Yes.
It tends to squash whatever's going on.
Right.
This specific, actually I have it here just because I wanted to note for myself, because we wanted to stay on topic, that my intent is to allow legal recourse against a nuisance property faster, not change how enforcement works or anything. But we do need, stepping back, Chief Morber did say that these letters that go out, when they do go out, are very effective. They tend to
Lieutenant White
squash
said that as well.
what is going on. So the intent of this is, I understand that it's might not be addressing some of the teeth concerns that we all have. It is addressing, it will address the issues faster as far as the criminal nuisance
Right.
things that we're
So
currently
I
seeing.
think, Mayor, I think where the building department came into this conversation initially is when I spoke with Lieutenant White. He said that he mailed out 2 nuisance letters for building violations. And those are the only 2 that he never heard back from. So I don't know if they had criminal activity and building together, but that's where the building came into play. He said that a meeting early in the year, the building department, if there were cars, if they were being cited for cars not licensed in the driveways or whatever, because they are on a complaint, it's complaint based, right? That if they would send them that information, then the police could look and see if they had criminal activity as well. So I think that's where the whole topic of building came up in the conversation, just for clarification. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. I see this as one part of, in my head, 3 steps. This could speed it up. I think the mayor's absolutely correct. We need to redefine nuisances between building and between criminal. And once we do that, the final step needs to be, as you said in the CDBG, but we got to start funding Project Impact somehow more. Because that's where what Councilor Griffin said is what we need. Once we separate the criminal from the building, if we speed it up, Project Impact needs to be funded properly, or else there won't be any action. If you got $10,000 in Project Impact, how many houses can you tear down?
You don't know because you don't know what the abatement's going to be.
Right, but that's why we have something like Project Impact. So I think this helps speed it up, but the next steps are redefining what's what so that we don't have departments crossing over, and then get the funds to where we need it to be when they are the one side. You know, the criminal side is the criminal side, but once the other side, once it's redefined, if Project Impact can be used better, that's when we start to see more progress.
So I'm going to leave it at this. Mr. Greer, you drafted up the way you spoke with Mrs. Miller.
Yes, ma'am.
And we will move forward in that manner. And I think moving forward, it is important to define nuisance. And I think we've had this conversation every week that we've discussed this. So I do believe that needs to be done. So Mr. Griffin and Mr. Greer, are you good with that? You'll draft, or you'll
Yes.
strike
Yeah,
and change the
I will change the
wording?
language, and have it, run it through Mrs. Miller, and then I'll make sure that all of council is included on that for the proposed amendment.
We're
to
gonna
the
have
legislation.
a definition of a nuisance. Right now, they're all a nuisance, right? They're all considered a nuisance. Criminal property, it's all under the heading of nuisance, is right now.
That's where I think we need to
We
redefine.
gotta
Right.
redefine
Yeah.
what's
Right.
considered a nuisance and what you gonna do, you know.
Yeah.
It's a mess, it's because there's criminals living there.
Okay, so the next piece of legislation that we will be voting on this evening, well, we aren't voting on the last piece of legislation, but this piece of legislation we are voting on this evening. It's the purchase of police cruisers from Ganley Ford, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Ganley Ford to purchase 2 police cruisers and declaring an emergency. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you'll know this, but I'll ask of the mayor and the other directors. With these hybrid vehicles, and I'm not sure with the other 2, are our employees able to work on these? Do they have the specialized tools? Do they have the training to work on hybrid vehicles, if that's a thing?
I have some answers for you,
Okay.
if you have questions, only because I reached out to Lieutenant White and the chief was on vacation, and the chief actually answered me back. I just have to find the email, so that I can, give you the proper response. So the answer is, most of the time, but not always, some service has to be done, has had to be done at Ganley Ford, but minimal. And I believe, of course, I can't find the email. Okay. Okay, here we are. Okay. So Lieutenant White and I had a conversation over the phone, and it pretty basically went over the questions that we outlined when we discussed it initially. So the questions aren't here, but this was the response. So they have a built-in technology package that has the wiring built in and in-car computer screen that saves on the costs by eliminating the need for a dedicated laptop in the vehicle, by allowing just a simpler and less expensive solid-state drive SSD CPU unit to be installed in the trunk. It also saves on the need to not buy and install mounts in the vehicle for the laptops. The hybrids have saved on our gas costs. We are running 15% under our gas costs for the year from our budgeted amount. The hybrids also allow the car's computers to keep running while the vehicles are not on and moving. This is a big time saver for officers to not have to reboot after being out of the vehicle for a while. Additionally, idling kills engines, so less idle time equates to longer vehicle life. As you know, we run them till they die. Also, by staying with the same models, we can use old parts when necessary. The tow yard has 2 old cruisers that we have parted out. The Fords have been great vehicles for us, and we received excellent service when needed from Ganley. The fact that they are a wholly American-owned company with Northeast Ohio factories is better yet. So that was the response that I received regarding our questions. And when I spoke with Lieutenant White on the phone, he said that generally they can repair the cars, but the cars are new, so they haven't needed much repair, so.
My concern is if, as you said, we run them until we die, eventually they come out of warranty, and that's where I want to know if our employees are able to work on these, because if if that's out of warranty and you're sending it to Ganley, labor cost is what, $70, $80 an hour for labor anymore?
Right.
I'm just wondering, and I don't know anything about hybrid cars, but I do know they have specialized batteries, that whole nine. Do we have tools and training to work on those if need be?
So what I think he said is that when they calculate mileage on, so a police cruiser, say it has 40,000 miles on it. They don't calculate it as 40,000 miles because it's left running all the time and it's in idle. But if it's a hybrid, it shuts off, so you're not having the idle time. So the wear and tear on the vehicle is much less. Is the way I understand it. I'm not a mechanic, so that's the way I understood it.
Well, I'm not a mechanic either, and like I said, I wish somebody was here that could answer more thoroughly what work would have to go on. Director Flaker, have we paid anything to Ganley Ford for work done that might have been able to have been done in-house? Do you know off the top of your head?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Whenever they have to take a cruiser for repair, they just put in on the PO requisition, it just says like cruiser repair. So that, that could mean any one of the cruisers in your city that could be getting repaired. So I don't know if it's hybrid or not. One thing we all have to take into consideration is the technology in any car anymore. It is, do we have the capabilities, even with it being a fully fuel vehicle, do we have the capabilities because of the technology and the computers?
Can't hardly get the batteries out.
That's another, so hybrid, gas, that's another question to ask. It's just mainly the computers in vehicles. That any vehicle you get today is nothing but computers. So.
You're absolutely correct. My son works for GM as a computer engineer, and it's crazy. And this is a whole room full of computer engineers, and they problem shoot for weeks. So,
Yep.
yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to piggyback on Mr. Heidick's thing, there's a thing called right to work on your own vehicle. When, like, say it goes out of warranty, we want the dealership to work on our warranty work or whatever. And as mentioned by Mr. Flaker and yourself, and we all know this, computers are going more electronic. We really should possibly, to save money down the road, look at getting our guys qualified with some of these computer programs and equipment to address some of the issues ourselves. Mechanics is no longer turning wrenches or adjusting valves or checking tires. There's a lot of computer stuff, and there's a lot of training available to keep it in-house, make sure our guys are qualified to work on our own vehicles. I know a lot of work goes to the dealer because of the computer stuff, but we have our own garage that we could invest in our workers, our service techs here, and maybe save some money in the long run. Maybe keep our vehicles running a little longer.
I don't think our street garages.
Okay. Yes.
I'm just going to say something smart. I don't think our street garage is qualified or has the ability to work on computers at this point. Maybe in the new street garage that we have, that could be something, but what they have right now is just a pit, change oil.
Yeah, it starts with stuff
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
And I agree with Councilor Angeloff, but if the hybrids are gonna be the way of the future, then these are green vehicles. There's gotta be grants out there somewhere that can get our guys training and whatnot.
Probably.
Yes.
I'm just saying that we need to not be here all night talking about.
I understand
something
that, but
that's gonna change.
I've had several pieces of legislation and safety that have sparked conversation, and I looked at the council rules, and nothing says that our committee meeting has to last 30 minutes. So I don't feel comfortable just cutting someone off if they have.
I'm not asking you to cut them off. I'm just saying we
Well,
can't change this.
No, I know we can't. I'm prepared to vote on this tonight. I said that last week, so, So I have one more miscellaneous discussion. There was a piece of legislation, a request for legislation sent to me regarding sex offenders, and I needed to get some legal information on this piece of legislation as well. So I reached out to Director Miller, and I'm going to defer to her again because she's the legal expert and I'm not.
Okay, On this, we do have some leeway to amend the ordinance on that. The concern that I have on this one is the addition of the word church. I think that, I think we might think we know what that is, unfortunately, or fortunately. A church is not a building anymore. A church can be anywhere. Churches meet in homes. Churches can meet in schools. Churches can meet in any building. So a church is not what we traditionally think of as a church any longer. So I don't think we can use the word church in the ordinance. A private-owned park is not also something I think we could include in the ordinance. A city-owned park is a dedicated park that is there now, would be there tomorrow. A private park could occur at any moment. So there could be property that a business owns today, and tomorrow they could put a park there if they chose to do that, and then the next day they could not have a park there if they chose to do that. And so I think that's a transitory nature, and I'm not sure that that would be something that would be acceptable. Then the third thing is the towpath, which is absolutely, would be very similar to a public park, which I agree with. The only issue with the towpath is that we would need to have,
So I think when you say planning, I was going to say, I feel like planning was involved.
Measurement. I would need to know what 1,000 feet is from the towpath through the city, because what you can't do is create a 1,000 feet measurement that would eliminate the ability for anyone to live anywhere. So what you can't do is create so many restrictions that they can't live anywhere. Does that make sense? So if there's one skill I do not possess at all, is the ability to measure with my mind. Like, I could never describe the height of anyone everyone to me is tall, and no one is tall, really. But everyone to me is tall, and I also cannot measure feet or yardage. I can't do that. So I don't have in my mind how far 1,000 feet is from the towpath going in any direction. So I would need planning or whoever does that to show me what 1,000 feet off the towpath is running through the city. And if that is an amount of space that still allows people to have a place to live, then we could definitely amend the ordinance to include the towpath.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunt, is that something that you can help me
And I
with?
only said planning because I can't think of what other department would do that.
Yeah, that would be something that we could work on. It would provide, there would be available residential places. The 1,000 feet would preclude all residential in the city, so.
It would not preclude?
So, to Ms. Miller's point, they can still live in the city.
He's saying that all residential homes are 1,000 feet from like the house.
No.
Not all. He's
No.
saying there are homes, correct? There are homes that are further than 1,000 feet in which residents could live.
That's correct.
Okay. So moving forward with this, Mr. Jaber, you can decide how so I would make the recommendation that we remove church and private park by virtue of the law director's advice. So if you want to reach out to Mrs. Miller to get the draft ready, and then we will have something solid to look at.
Also, then,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt, if you could also do the city parks then and do 1,000 feet on every city park. 'Cause
Okay.
that's a little crazy because we have a lot of city parks. So, we'll just have to look at that.
Okay.
The mayor has his hand up.
Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this already voted out of committee as is? So if there's any change.
So it hasn't been on the agenda, so,
We didn't have a draft.
There-
I believe it was voted out of the committee.
It was voted out of committee for 3 readings with pending legal opinion, so but we haven't had one reading yet, so it was just voted out last safety committee, so we can get a draft together and,
We've already had one reading on it.
no, we haven't had a reading. We don't have a draft. How would we have a reading?
If you meet every 2 weeks, how did we vote it out of committee? I'm just,
So,
It was not voted out of committee, it was pulled by Mrs. Miller's office,
okay,
so she could do the research on it.
Okay.
So it has not even been voted out of committee at
Okay.
this point.
okay, thank you.
thank you for clarification.
No problem.
I'm like, okay. So, Mr. Hunt is going to check on the 1,000 feet with respect to city parks. And then you can contact Mrs. Miller to get a draft together, and we can move forward. Is there any other miscellaneous discussion? Yes.
I also want to thank Mrs. Miller for all the hard work I gave you. I apologize for giving you more work. Assuming more clarification than that. Thank you though for your time.
Okay. Hearing no other miscellaneous discussion, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin,
And I'll second.
second by Mr. Greer. We are adjourned at 7:18.
So much paperwork. There's so much paperwork.
Okay, next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Rules, Marketing, and Development. I would like to call this meeting to order today, November 8th. We are meeting in council chambers. All members are present and all others as noted. Tonight, we have no requests for legislation, but we do have miscellaneous discussion on rule changes, additional changes. Did everyone read the changes, the proposals and stuff for the Rules Committee? If so, do you have any suggestions or what we're going to add, subtract? Yes, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at the use of electronic devices here, and the suggested update is basically no devices other than the ones issued by the city shall be prohibited in front of the gate here in council area. All members are authorized by 201 to request the presiding officer to, I would like to add add clarification to this. As it sits, council currently doesn't even have to be, certain members don't even have to be in the room during committee meetings. I would like to clarify that possibly maybe saying no devices during committee of the whole and legislative meeting, if that makes more sense. We're all here, we're all in tune, we're all in conversation. But if I'll give you an example. A council member may not be on Rules, Marketing, and Development. They don't even have to be in this room.
Right.
So either tell them, maybe make the rule say you can't have it here, you gotta go outside, but I really think that well, just my opinion, maybe we restrict personal electronic devices to committee of the whole and legislative meeting only. We had that restriction instead of the committee meetings.
So the committee meeting,
Correct, because some of council members don't sit on that committee. And given they're not partaking in I think they should partake in the conversation, but they don't have to.
So this goes back to what I said a couple of weeks ago, is that before COVID, we had committee meetings in separate rooms, and you went to your committee meeting, and then you went to the ones that you could go to when, as a bystander, and to add input or to acquire information. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Correct, yeah, we operate under the old rules, but a new scenario right now. So there's some bigger changes that I was looking at that I'm not ready to present to rules yet, but those were just my suggestions looking at these rules.
Does anyone else have any comments on this? Yes, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Greer, would it be satisfactory that it would be, the restriction would be for committees in progress as
I think
well?
so, like committee members during it, that's what I'm getting at, like active participating council members in committees probably shouldn't be on their personal devices. I agree with that 100%. But there's times when we each sit here, not actively in a committee meeting, and we don't need to participate. So I would just like to.
That sounds, Ms. Angela?
I don't agree with that. I don't know, I don't care if you're participating in the committee of the whole meeting. If we're all sitting here together, we are all together. And I think if you're not going to be on your phone, then you're not going to be on your phone. I don't think it's, I'm not on the committee, I'm going to sit here and do this. I think it's very rude, and I think that other than the iPad that was issued to us, I don't think that we should do that. And that's coming from a lot of constituents that I talk to, you know, sitting here on your cell phone. Why are they sitting on their cell phone? You know, and how many constituents know what committee you're on or what committee you're on? They don't know what committee you're on. You know, they don't. So, so I don't agree with that, because if Joyce is on a committee and I'm sitting here and I want to text and find out the football scores, or I want to text and everything, that's not fair for her, because, you know, she's looking over and she's seeing me doing this. So I just feel that we are here for a reason, and that is not, our constituents want us here 100%, body and mind, and I don't think that, I mean, there are times, you know, you might have an emergency, but what I always say, call the police department, they can come up and get me, you know. Mostly everybody knows where you're at if you're a council person on Monday night. So that's my feeling.
Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Council is aware that if you don't sit on a committee, you don't have to be in this room, right, during that committee meeting. It's just, I don't know if it's been said or what the rules, but to that point.
What Mr. Medges said.
Mr. Medges told us that we all had to come to all the meetings because we had people that didn't know.
Then I
was
suggest we
going
add
on.
it to the rules.
Okay, he
Right.
requested all of us to come to all the
Mr. Hyde.
meetings.
And
Thank you,
I thought
Chair.
everybody agreed on. I thought everybody likes having this open conversation, so everybody knows what's going on.
I
on every
personally,
ward.
I personally love the
Yes,
idea.
instead of saying, I was in another meeting, I didn't know what was going on here. So I thought that's what everybody agreed on, or everybody liked.
Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. By all rights, the way it's written, it says, when inside area forward of the railing. If a council member decides, if they're not on that committee, they theoretically would be a free citizen to sit in the gallery and be able to use their devices. But once you're, the way it's written, once you're sitting within these confines, this is our turf. So if, for instance, I'm not a member of safety, if I felt the need to be able to check my personal devices, am I not free and clear to sit in the gallery with the citizenry instead of sitting in my member's seat? I'm just posing that question if anybody wants to weigh in on that.
It's whatever the president wants to do, whatever. I mean, you're going to get up and you're going to walk and sit down, and where people are watching this and
If-
thinking, what the
if
heck,
you're-
where's
if-
Mr. Heidick going, sitting in the pews, you know? Because like I said, they don't know who's on a committee,
Correct, but
you know,
my,
and I think that's just, you know, I mean, I know you're using that as an example, but I just,
in that example, that would be, like I said, if I felt the need during Counselor DeBevick's safety meeting to use my personal device, then regardless of how it looks, I would be free to go and sit with the gallery.
You would excuse yourself to
No,
go.
you
sit.
wouldn't.
He wouldn't even have
I wouldn't,
Well,
even
no,
I wouldn't
but
have
I'm
to.
just get up
And that's
and
why,
walk.
that was my point, the way this is written is, once you come inside the railing, you're you are in our domain. And the reason I wrote it like this is because if you're sitting within these confines, you've made that decision to be a part of what's going on within these confines. Again, Counselor Greer, you're not on rules. You have every right to go sit right there in the front row. Do you not?
Yep.
Okay. But once you come in here, once you're inside that, and then basically what I would say is our house, then as our house, you would be at the whim of the rules of our house. That's just my example there. Anybody's free to weigh in. Chair,
Oh,
the mayor has
Mr.
a hand
Barber.
up there.
Thank you, Chair. Now, this all goes back to the president who makes this decision, right?
Yes.
Correct, the president of council?
I would assume in the committee it would be the chairman.
Right. So go three. I think we should really just see what the new future president will say and follow his lead on this. I mean, in a month and a half, Mr. Majors will be gone, so I think we should go follow the rules of the future president and see what he says, and just, again, obey by the president. I mean, this is his office now, so.
The mayor has his hand up as well.
All right,
Yeah, real quick, I think the intent, if I, Mr. Heide, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is similar if you've ever been to county councils, you know, it's all one kind of bench at county council, so once they come in, if they're not part of the committee, they have to be respectful of their colleagues and the meeting that's going on. So I think what I'm hearing is, once you enter past this gate, if you're gonna sit there and you're participating by sitting there, be respectful of your colleague and the meeting that's going on. You need to step out because you're not truly a part of that committee, then you can step out to use your personal phone. I think, is that what you're saying, Mr.
That's,
Heide?
as written, that's the intent of what's written, that if you don't have to be
Right.
within the confines, you're free as a citizen to go past that way.
I think it's fair to be respectful of your colleagues and the meeting that's going on.
I personally think myself, there's no cell phone should be allowed in this area here. If we change and, you know, for you to go on the other side, if you're not a part of the committee or whatever, and you want to go there, to me, that's okay. But once you get in this gate, you shouldn't be on the cell phone, being distracted or whatever. That's my personal take of that.
And I would,
Mrs. Fry?
if I'm,
I'm in agreement with Mr. Griffin and Mrs. Angeloff and the mayor and everyone that has said that when you are sitting in this area, you should not have your phone.
Right.
It should not be on.
Which is how it's written.
and I would also like to point out, because of the way it's written, it's for anybody authorized under Rule 201 past that gate, which includes, by that rule, the press. And again, the way it's written, at that point, the presiding officer would have to okay whatever press device is there, just for an instance there.
Okay, is there anything else on the list here to bring to attention?
So, just
Yes,
for,
Mrs. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Heidi, just for clarification, so then the press would have to get permission
Permission
to use their device?
Correct.
I
If they want
think-
to sit,
Inside.
On this
Inside
side of
in-
the railing?
Right, this side
Okay.
of it.
Okay, well, they
Yes.
don't sit inside this
Right.
rail.
but the
Everybody's able to
reason I
see.
wrote it is because they're authorized to,
Yeah.
Okay,
so I had to include them.
gotcha.
Yes, Mrs. Fry.
I just wanted to know if this is just our first discussion on this and we're going to add to the rules or, wait for suggestions from other people, or did you already get suggestions from other
No,
members of
we don't have,
council?
we have a couple of suggestions. We just decided to discuss it some more. So we're free to discuss it and then make a draft of it. And, if everybody agreed, then we can take it out of committee.
Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Thank you. That's why, just tentatively, I put at the end that the additions wouldn't start until the beginning of next year, just in case we wanted to have a discussion and clarify things any further. Because this isn't something that I wanted to, tonight, if the chair would wouldn't mind not bring out tonight, just so we can finalize whatever we all agree that would be the right path forward.
Yes, Mrs. Fry?
Do you think that we should have this the last meeting of the year?
I think
So
that-
that they are already in place?
I think that by the
when
last
the
meeting-
new president takes,
I don't think this really reflects on the presidency at all. This is the council's decision.
Right.
The
Right.
council,
But if
the
Thank you.
president wouldn't make the.
If the chair deems it necessary, I would be in favor of the last rules committee of the year to finalize it going into the next year. So again, we have
so we could
2 more
start
left.
fresh
Right,
at the
right.
beginning of next
Correct.
year.
Is there anything else?
Anything else on here? Language, attire, profanity, well, we know that, some things are self-explanatory. But there's anything else on here you want to discuss or change or talk about? So this is good as written.
Again, if your permission, I would like to wait till the end of the year just in case.
Okay. We'll wait till the end of the year just to, to see what happens and discuss it some more. And, so do we have any more miscellaneous discussion tonight for rules? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I will second that, sir.
We adjourn at 7:34.
It's me. Oh. Thank you, thank you.
I can't see here now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, next up is city utilities and Mrs. Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's November 8th, 2021. I'd like to call the city utilities to order. All members are present and others noted. We have one request for legislation. We have a letter from Denny Weaver, Interim Utilities Director, requesting legislation authorizing the appropriation of $100,000 from the unappropriated item of the 517 sewer fund to the capital budget of the sewer fund. Funds are available through cooperative agreements with the City of Norton and the County of Summit with contributions of $50,000 from each. Emergency wording is requested and we'll be referring it to financing. The emergency wording is requested in order to facilitate timeliness in keeping the project moving forward. Do I have any questions on this? Do I have a motion to call for it?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We then have a request a letter from Mr. Weaver, the interim utilities director, asking for legislation to dispose of 3 pieces of equipment and 3 vehicles deemed no longer needed for any municipal purpose and unfit and unsafe for disposal in any other matters. Did everyone get the pictures of the equipment? They are requesting emergency wording on this. Did you say you did not?
No, I said I did, but I don't know if every member of council got the
Did you all get
pictures.
pictures?
I did.
Yes, everyone did.
No, I didn't.
So, they're going to eliminate these using the one that'll pay the most.
Counselor, did you get it?
Did you get it?
They have been used to the end of their life, believe me. They trade them around from department to department as much as possible, and these are beyond being able to be used anywhere else. Do I have a yes, ma'am?
I just have a real quick question. So what method are we going to use to scrap them?
They are going to have, there's going to be I read that they had
The highest.
the highest bidder for the scrap. It says-
Okay.
Yes. So they have, the 6 items are listed, and they are, the business, they will be given to the business that gives them the highest rate of return.
I make a motion to call for this.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion for utilities? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
We are adjourned at
7:55.
7:35. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least is Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Oh,
Mine's only 3 minutes off.
Thank you, Mr. President. The time is 7:36, and we are in council chambers, and I am beginning, or calling to order, the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council persons and guests as noted on my sheet. We have a couple pieces of legislation that have been requested, and then we also have the budget report, and we have several pieces of legislation on the agenda for this evening for voting. The first request was a letter from Dennis Weaver, Interim Utilities Director, requesting legislation for payment to Ohio Edison for services at the Fraser Park package plant in the amount of $6,911.26. The work was done to raise the transformer and pad during the elimination process at the package plant. Emergency wording is requested. On your letters that we received, it does say that the monies are available in the 2010 utilities budget. However, that should read the 2021 utilities budget. That was just an oversight. Council approval is needed on this because the purchase order will be dated after the invoice date, and it is in excess of $3,000. As I said previously, that the monies are in the 2021 utilities budget. Does anyone have any questions about this? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a
Mrs.
motion.
Angela? Okay, and Mrs. Angela made a motion, seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. The next piece of legislation was referred to us from utilities, and this was a letter from Dennis Weaver, Interim Utilities Director, requesting legislation authorizing the appropriation of $100,000 from the unappropriated item of the 517 sewer fund to the capital budget of the sewer fund. Funds are available through cooperative agreements with the City of Norton and the County of Summit, with contributions of $50,000 from each. Emergency wording is requested. This particular piece of legislation is in relation to the Brentwood package plant elimination. And, oops, I have the wrong letter in there. Does anyone have any questions about that particular piece of legislation? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Zubovic, seconded by Mr. Medges. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously as well. The next piece of legislation that was requested is a letter from Elizabeth Doherty requesting legislation regarding the fire department collective bargaining agreement. And emergency wording was also requested on this particular piece of legislation. And the emergency wording is necessary due to the expiration of the current collective bargaining agreement that expires at the end of 2021. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Do I have a motion to call for this? Mr. Medges made a motion. Do I have a second? Mrs. Angela, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it also passes unanimously. The next piece of legislation is actually just the financial report for the month of October 2021. And you should all have a copy. And if Mr. Flaker will be so kind to guide us through this.
All right, starting off with the health insurance fund, the revenues for the month were $392,000, expenditures $363,000. That puts the unexpended fund balance at $1,352,000. We have a positive net year to date of $342,000. Moving on to income tax, the estimate for the month of October was $916,000. Actuals came in a little over $1.5 million. I just want to make a note that that $1.5 million also includes a payment from the city of Akron to the tax sharing agreement, along with the third quarter JED payment from the city of Northland. So those two things combined are approximately $450,000. So our actual just plain income tax for read-up was slightly above our estimate. We're over our estimate for the year by almost $774,000. That's about an 8% overage. We did a $900,000 transfer to general fund and $125,000 transfer to the emergency reserve. Comparing this time last year to current, we're about $500,000 ahead, and that's subtracting out the tax sharing agreements and the JED payment for the third quarter. So we're about $500,000 ahead compared to last year at this time. And just make note, CCA was just catching up at this time last year. Moving on to the statement of cash receipts and disbursements, there's a couple funds in the negative. The first one is FEMA fund. The next on the list that's in the negative is CDBG. Both of those funds are basically federal grants that will get reimbursed for. We have to pay out the money, they'll reimburse us for. The final fund in the negative is the internal cost allocation fund. That is due to an encumbrance outstanding. Once we continue to pay down the fuel and reimburse that account, and there's also that pending legislation. That fund should be fine through the end of the year. Looking at the last 3 months of activity, you'll notice the general fund unencumbered cash balance has stayed roughly the same the past 3 months. You'll notice a jump in the cash balance of the special revenue fund. Majority of that is due to the tax sharing agreement payment from the city of Akron for B&W. Enterprise fund bounced back from going down the previous month. A lot of that has to stem from monthly receipts being higher with disbursements being lower. All other funds has steadily throughout the year has increased by anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000. That trend continued in the month of October. Looking and comparing last October to this October, our unencumbered cash balance is up by about $1.4 million. A lot of that stemming from the CARES Act of last year. That number, like I said last month, should be getting closer together due to the fact the CARES Act, I think we did the final expenditures out of it in November and December of last year. Special revenue funds is up by about $10 million. Big driving force in that is the ARPA fund in there. Enterprise funds is up by about almost $2 million. I think a lot of that has to deal with, you notice the receipts are up by about $1.8 million in compared to last year. I'm pretty sure a lot of that has to deal with COVID. People just not being able to pay their utility bills last year, where it's bouncing back this year. And then all other funds is up by about 300,000. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Flaker. Did anyone have any questions for him about the budget report? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for that for tonight?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick, seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I have, we also have an appointment this evening, and the appointment is to the Barberton Civil Service Commission. Mr. Patrick Boyle, and this is appointing Mr. Boyle to a 6-year term beginning 1/1/2022 and ending 12/31/2027. His application was attached. Did everyone get a copy of that application? Did anyone have any questions about the application? Okay, so do I have a motion to call for Mr. Boyle's appointment? Mrs. Angela made a motion. Do we have a second? Mrs. DeVevick seconded the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No,
Aye.
yeah, I didn't need to say that. All right, then we come to our pending legislation for this evening. The first is ordinance number 117-2021, title Appropriation Personnel Services American Rescue Plan Grant Fund, an ordinance appropriating $228,687.89 from the unappropriated item of the American Rescue Plan Grant Fund to the personal services budget of the American Rescue Plan Grant Fund. And, I beg your pardon? Yeah, it's for the police and fire. In fact, it is, fire will receive $126,507.89, and police will receive $102,180 for premium pay. The next piece of legislation is ordinance number 118-2021, title Transfer of Funds, Internal Cost Allocation Fund, an ordinance transferring $40,000 from the Income Tax Fund to the Internal Cost Allocation Fund and declaring an emergency. This is for Fund number 219, and this is for fuel chargebacks to departments to break even each month. The next piece of legislation we'll be voting on tonight is ordinance number 119-2021, titled Appropriation Internal Cost Allocation Fund, an ordinance appropriating $11,289 from the unappropriated item of the Internal Cost Allocation Fund to the Personal Services budget of the Internal Cost Allocation Fund and declaring an emergency. This is for workers' comp true-up, which basically means reconciliation. And we'll be voting on that this evening. The next piece of legislation is ordinance number 120-2021, and this is titled Appropriation Internal Cost Allocation Fund, $50,000. An ordinance appropriating $50,000 from the unappropriated item of the Internal Cost Allocation Fund to the operation and maintenance budget of the Internal Cost Allocation Fund and declaring an emergency. This is due to rising fuel costs on all city-owned vehicles. The next piece of legislation we'll be voting on this evening is ordinance number 121-2021, titled Transfer of Funds Sports Complex Operating Fund. This transfer is necessary because we collected less in league fees this year than we had anticipated. And we'll be voting on that this evening. Does anyone have anything for miscellaneous discussion for finance and personnel? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Angela, and seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. And we are adjourned at 8:55, but that's probably not right.
7.
Oh, 7:51. That's why. That's what's wrong. I kept looking at that and everybody was saying times. Okay, 7:51. Thank you so much.
Okay, that concludes our committee meetings. We'll take a 2-minute break and get moving.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I can just strike it out like what I was gonna change.
Thank you.
Blue or red or some highlighted.
No, I can do that, yeah.
Yep,
Yep, because
I wrote your name
like,
in.
I need to make these changes that are pretty easy to make.
What's already crossed out is
Is
current.
current, this was what I proposed, but, so, in like some of these areas, like this is all pretty self-explanatory, you can change it. But this earliest of the first of the 3 nuisances, the wording needs to be altered to mean the same, but
Just give me the right wording and that's gonna be easier.
I can, and then this one needs, I started writing this one, I go, wait a second, I'm getting confused with myself, so I needed to do
So that makes, if you handwrite it, that makes it easier.
Absolutely.
Once you get it all approved by whosoever, just throw it at me.
I will,
You know, if it's a clear after, just put it in your left hand.
I should eat, I'm not eating any.
I'm getting rid of all this Halloween candy. I knew I wanted to hear it.
I didn't have one piece of Halloween candy left. I had so many trick-or-treaters.
I have more than
I made these little pumpkin, I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I made them, like these pumpkins out of tissue paper and wrapped them up. Kids loved them, but I made like 75 of them and they were gone, and I had another bowl of candy and
tons of like. I walked across the street with my dog over to the neighbor's house and she goes, we have this many kids. I said, you're busting.
Yeah, because usually we only have about 20 kids. This year we
yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry.
sometimes my house has
Oh
one.
my God, you had
No, I need it sometimes. No, it was like a couple meetings ago, I was like almost anxious, like getting like nervous, like I don't know, like weird.
It's not real.
So bad. And I was like, I just gotta get up. Because being in one room,
Come on, baby.
everybody's here for longer.
You know, I was at Hartville one day, and I was walking around, and this guy had these bags, and he was selling chestnuts for a certain price. I said, dude, those are Buckeyes, they're not chestnuts.
I think we're
And
going
he
into
goes,
executive
oh, they're chestnuts. I said, no, they're Buckeyes. And I said, not only that, but I don't want to be around your lawsuit.
Dude, I got-
Buckeyes are poisonous. And he goes,
So much pain.
oh. And he pulled them right off. He knew doggone good well what those were. And he was selling them for people to eat.
I had a guy who used to give him a 5-gallon bucket to make necklaces out of them.
Uh-huh.
And people thought they were the coolest thing until about 15 minutes after they wore them, 'cause those things were so heavy.
Oh my God. People were picking them up like crazy out at Furnace Run when I took the dog hike. That's okay, I got it. I got a backup. No, I've had your favorite for this.
Okay, let's get going.
I will be there, but I will not be busy. I promise.
You have somebody that
Yeah, you will. Are you gonna come? I have my head. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I can do it. I do that wherever you want it.
I'll take some. Okay. And cracks and all kinds of stuff.
Hey, where you go?
Okay, this is a regular legislative meeting of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, November 8th, 2021. The time is 7:57. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mr. Griffin. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please bow our heads, please. Precious Lord, please give us guidance in this meeting, because a lack of guidance causes a nation to fall, but victory is won through many advisors. And last but not least, bless our men and women in our armed forces and our first responders. Watch over them wherever they may be. Let us all say amen.
Amen.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Here.
Mr. Heidick,
Here.
Mr. Greer,
Present?
Mrs. Angela,
Here.
Mr. Griffin,
Here.
Mr. Jaber,
Here.
Mrs. Coburn,
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Okay, we're going to go out of unusual order, and a request has been made by Elizabeth Doherty, Safety Director of the City of Barberton, to enter into an executive session to discuss collective bargaining matters. Having stated that request, I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss collective bargaining.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second motion to enter executive session.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mr. Heidick to enter into executive session for certain personnel matters to discuss collective bargaining matters. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Here.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Medges.
Yes. Okay, we are now in executive session at 7:59 PM.